Alright, so the first thing we're going to start with is a little bit about proportions, because it takes understanding a little bit about proportions in order to draw the skeleton correctly. If you don't know anything about proportions and you start drawing the skeleton, it might come out all funky. As long as the proportions are right, then you just like snap into pieces. So the proportions is like the basic formula that gives you the proper height and relation of everything, so everything looks correct. So learning proportions, what we're going to do is you're going to draw your straight line, like so. Go ahead and divide that line in half. I'm just going to use this guide over here that way. For the sake of the tutorial, it stays pretty perfect. Right? Now all I want you to do now is divide this in half, and then divide each of those in half. And you can do it exactly perfect if you want to. That's up to you. Right? Like so, I wasn't even looking over there. I should have. I think I matched it up pretty good though. So yeah, actually pretty dead on. Then I want you to take the width of the head. Now the width of the head is something you kind of have to get a feel for. Now of course you can do it totally mathematically or something if you wanted to, but typically the width of the head is something that people can just kind of intuitively feel out. So you just kind of draw this rectangle like so. So make sure it's a rectangle. Now all you have to do is extend that length out on each side, right, like that, and then draw lines. Oh, I kind of messed that up. Probably right about there. Draw lines coming down, and that's how you get the width of your box. Right, so now you have the box the human figure is going to fit into, or the rectangle the human figure is going to fit into. This trick right here is going to save you a lot of time and frustration, because it'll help you more easily fit the proportions of the figure into proper proportion. Just understanding this right here. So I want you to get used to this and get familiar with this here for a little bit. Go ahead and draw from reference a few times, like what you just see me draw here. Draw this, and I want you to be following along with me. It's very important that while I'm drawing, that you're drawing with me at the same time. You're going to get a lot more out of the videos in the course if you draw along with me than if you just watch it. And that's why I draw at a drawing pace. That way you can draw along with me. I try to keep a pretty even pace so that pretty much everyone can kind of keep up, Right, now next I want you to draw this several times, different sizes. And the point is to get used to how it feels to draw this. And that's the halfway point. Okay, extend it out. Once you get good at doing this, the rest of the figure will be really easy to draw into proportion. You won't have much trouble with it. So get used to drawing that. Fill up a whole page full of these, all different sizes. Alright, so go ahead and do that from reference a few times. Make sure you're looking at this or something. Draw it a few times from reference, and then start drawing it from your memory. Alright, so now let's go ahead and go on to the next part. So we know this right here is our bottom of our crotch, or near the bottom of the crotch. The crotch might come a little bit below it like this. What you can do now, and I like to think of it as a heart, and there's a lot of hearts in the human body, like the butt is like an upside down heart, right? And I think that's why we like the heart shape. Also the female breast, interesting enough, is an upside down heart. And then the human lips are kind of like that same kind of heart shape. Not quite, but they're there in the bottom lip, right? If you do it like this, it depends on what kind of lip it is. So it's just interesting that we have a lot of these hearts. And so one of the hearts here is in the hip bone. And we'll get into the difference between male and female. The main difference is that a female hip bone is wider, so it's shorter, it's squatter, and wider, so it's going to come out more like this. So the heart shape is going to be more like that, right? Whereas a male is going to be more like a V type heart shape. It's going to come up more. And another thing also you want to consider is, notice these lines, if I continue them down, they're quite far out from the hip. So don't think that your hip has to come way out here, because it doesn't. That's where the shoulders are. To get an idea, if you kind of cut this part in half and draw lines down, that's the typical width of your body of everything else, like the actual waist and everything like that. And so that's where your hips are going to come out. And it's good to memorize that precision, that mathematical precision. So don't forget to do these lines every time now. Every time we're drawing the human figure, with this proportions really quickly to learn this basic simplification. Then we'll get into the skeletal structure and all that, and then we'll be able to snap it back into this proportion. Then we'll learn how to distort the proportions after we learn all the anatomy. The anatomy is going to be like a good 13 hours so to learn all the bones and muscles and where they attach and stuff. And it's going to take you a lot longer to memorize all that and learn it. But once you do, I'm telling you, your figures will look that much better, and you'll be able to actually draw freely from imagination, knowing, oh, okay, I can logically think about these muscles. I know the underlying muscles where they attach, so I know how they're going to twist and turn when the arm turns this way. So this part here is important. You want to do this. It's rigorous, I know, but you want to do it. Then you kind of want to imagine this part coming up. Now, it's not going to come up quite to this. It's going to be a little bit below that, but this is like the heart shape right here. Right, this is for a male. We learn the male first, then we'll learn the female, and the female is just a slight alteration of the male. Again, with the female, all I would do is make it a little bit shorter and a little bit wider. That's what happens right here. And that's really the main difference right there. And then the fact she has breast. That bone structure is what changes everything. It changes how the love handles look. It changes how the legs look and how we have the wider part of the leg. So that little change in the structure of the skeleton changes a lot about how the overall figure looks. Right, so that's it. So we've added on quite a bit more information. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. What I want you to do is from the beginning, do everything all over again. And you can do this on paper. You don't have to do it in a computer program. You can use a ruler and stuff. Make sure you measure this. So the length of the neck we're going to learn is we take the halfway point and we're going to come up a little bit. So here's an exact measurement if you want an exact measurement. Cut this in half. Okay, and then cut it in half again if you want an exact measurement. That's one. And then cut it in half one more time, and that's where it's going to be. Okay, so if you want an exact measurement, that's how you can get it. But I'm just going to put it right about here, so it's a little bit higher than the halfway point. It's not quite in half though. This is where your collarbones are going to come out, and this is what we're going to actually draw here is the collarbones coming out here. Simplified version of the collarbones. Now the rib cage is going to fit, and it's going to come up a little bit higher than. Remember, we have this line here. That's the next line from the halfway line. The rib cage is going to be a little bit higher than that point. If you want an exact measurement, divide this in half and divide it in half and divide it in half or something like that. Or actually, probably right about here. That's where it's at. So divide in half 2 times. Divide this segment in half. Divide in half again. That's where the rib cage is going to fall. And again, it's good to do those measurements at first because you're going to get it developed in your mind perfectly. Then go ahead and go like this. Pull it down to about that point. And you don't want to get too wide with it. It doesn't go wider than these lines here. It stays within these lines. That is, your rib cage isn't going to get wider than your hip. So, right, I actually drew that line out there. I'm drawing kind of far away, so it's kind of hard to do that technique I was talking about. I'd have to zoom in here and then go, okay, I have a point here, and then my lines would be nice and clean. And that's one thing about Photoshop. To get nice and clean lines, you have to zoom in. It's kind of hard when you're zoomed out like this to get nice and clean lines. Yeah, you can try, but it is difficult. And as you zoom in, it's not quite adding up right. They're not matching up exactly where you drew them. I'm just going to kind of clean this up a little bit. But you can draw it nice and messy zoomed out because I like to be able to see everything that I'm drawing. It's kind of hard to draw zoomed in when you want to get everything proportioned right. So I do a quick sketch zoomed out, and then if I want to do a nice sketch, I just draw over it. Right, so there we have it. That's the rib cage. So we added a little bit more information, and it's easier if you kind of learn it by adding a little piece of information and start over, repetition. So now I want you to start all over again. This time, draw another line, divide it in half. Again, do it with the ruler. All right, so we're pretty much where we were at last time. Actually, we are where we were at last time. Okay, so again, hopefully you're drawing along with me and don't just like skip around in the video. It's really bad. It's important that you draw rigorously with me. That's how you'll get better. when you think about where the arms attach, typically you can have the elbows come down here to like a little bit above the belly button, but typically, realistically, the elbows come more about to the rib cage. So to do that, then first we're going to learn another thing. We're going to draw the arm. Now the arm socket, and what's cool about the proportions learning right now, they're going to relate to the skeletal structure, which is what we're going to draw next. They come a little bit outside of the lines here. So these lines meet up the collarbone lines. That's what they're representing. They stop right here at those lines that we developed. These lines here. These balls go a little bit outside that line. How do we know how long the arm is though altogether? Well, one thing you can go is, this is the easier way to learn it, is how the whole entire length of the arm. So the arm and the wrist come all the way down to about your crotch area. So if you want to just kind of go, okay, I'm going to draw a line from here and come all the way down to the crotch area. Remember, this is the halfway line here. That's the first halfway line that we drew. Right? That divides the whole entire line in half. We know the crotch is a little bit below that line. The hands fall right along this line, almost the middle of the hands, a little bit higher than the middle of the hands fall right along, as you can see, right along this line. And so the wrists fall a little bit above the line. So since the crotch falls a little bit below the middle of the line, the hands, or the wrists rather, are a little bit above the line. If you want to get an exact measurement, one way you can do it is divide this in half, and then divide it in half again and draw it out, and that's pretty much where the wrist will be at. That's the overall length of the arm down to the wrist, like so. Now from the wrist down, you have your hands. The hands you can first learn just drawing a basic shape like this. Two little basic shapes. One come off here, then you have your fingers. And the overall length of the hand from here to here is equal pretty much. That is draw it big here. This part here is about equal to this part here. So your fingers are about equal to this first part. So basically you can like draw a rectangle, a long rectangle in here, divide it in half, and it's kind of like a rectangle goes to almost like a triangle more, so kind of like a cut off triangle, but not, it's more like a long triangle like this, and you're cutting part of it off, and that's part of the hand. You divide that in half, that's pretty much your hand. So then you have your fingers that fit in there. We're not drawing hands yet, but I just want you to have at least a general idea where the hand goes, some basic shape you can place where the hand should be. Now the next thing is this isn't your halfway point. That line there, that division line, is not your halfway mark for your elbows, or for the circles we're going to draw for now. Instead, your halfway mark is actually going to be the bottom of your rib cage, or even a little bit below the rib cage. That will be the halfway mark. That's the part where you divide the arm. Once you know that concept, then you know the arm from the wrist to the part of the actual bone here, or you can think about it this way: from here to here and from here to here is about the same length. And because of that, you'll know where your halfway mark is going to be. And so you go, okay, just pretty much you're dividing this part in half here like that. And now you know it's the halfway mark, which just happens to be where the rib cage is. Right, so I'm just kind of drawing the hand like this for now. Just basic shapes. Right, so that's all the new information that we had to add so far. Pretty simple when you think about it. And once you have that memorized, this concept here, that the elbows are typically right where you have, right where the bottom of your ribs would be. But in this case, when you're doing the skeletal structure, you just know where the bottom of the hands will be. That's what you need to memorize. Instead of memorizing where the elbows need to fall along with, don't even worry about all that. The easier way, in my opinion, is to simply go, okay, I know that the center line is going to cut my hands almost in half. The hands are going to hang a little bit below the center line. I know that the crotch area is going to almost cut my hands directly in half. And I know that I need the fingers to hang down past the crotch area. Now you know the overall length of your hand, of your arm, including the hand. So you know the hand takes up this space here. Then you know where the wrist has to be, because you know a little bit above the crotch. If the crotch goes a little bit below the middle line, the wrist area falls a little bit above the crotch, that center line. And that information is what you need to memorize. Is crotch is a little bit below the center line, and the same distance above, that's where my wrists are going to be. Then it's just as simple as drawing a line between those areas and then dividing that line in half. Go, okay, what's the center point of that line? That's where the bending point of the arm is. That's where basically your elbow is going to be. And the elbow is really just part of your ulna bone. We'll get into that when we go into the anatomy part. You know, this is where your hand develops and starts and comes down here. We'll learn the anatomy of the hand later. The hand is basically almost about as long as your face. Take your hand right now, put the bottom of your palm to your chin and extend your fingers up. They go up to a little bit higher than your eyebrows. They go up to about the center of your forehead. That's about how long a hand is. So, but again, we'll get into hand anatomy later. Now the legs are just as easy to learn. It's the same thing, except it's even easier because now all you have to do is drop your legs all the way down to just about the bottom of this line. But first we want to find, it's not the halfway point, but toward the bottom here, there's a little circle here. Now you're going to understand why we're drawing the figure this way when we get into drawing the skeleton. You'll see, oh, okay, that's actually a simplification of the femur bone. Come down and they kind of angle in. First, just draw a line coming here down to the bottom like this. Just draw it coming all the way down. Now all you have to know is that a little bit from the ground up, that's where the feet are going to be. So if we divide this part in half, and then divide that part in half, divide that part in half, that's about where the feet are going to be. Right? So for the feet for now, we're just going to put little like hooves. That's all we're going to put for feet. Boom, like that. You can kind of see where the knees are going to be, and if I wanted an exact halfway point, it'd be like there. So I kind of made my halfway point wrong, but oops, I was kind of being lazy with it. That's why that happened. I should have looked at it a little bit longer than a second, or not even a second, milliseconds. Right, so let's go ahead and draw a halfway point. Okay, now all you have to do is go, okay, I have this overall length from here to here. That part, just imagine dividing in half. If I divide this line in half, where's the halfway point going to be? Well, it's not there, right? It's a little bit above that. It's probably right about here. So let's go see if I nailed it. Yep, pretty damn close. That's like almost dead on. So it's a little bit above that halfway mark. That is the dividing point of the leg here. So then you're going to fit your knees into that area. So the knees are going to simply fit right above here, or the knee area. And I like to draw as two. The reason why we're simplifying like this right now is two circles. You're going to see what that represents the femur bone and then the tibia. So it's important to learn it this way. And then we'll just draw one line coming down here, and we'll just draw another line, which will be the fibula. And then over here, we'll draw one more line coming out here and one coming out here. And that represents the two bones. You have the outer bone and inner bone. The outer bone by your thumb is your radius. That's the one that turns. So when you turn your thumb over, you'll feel that bone. It's actually turning over the ulna. And the ulna is the one where the elbow's on. That's the ulna is the inside where your pinky is. So ulna, radius. All right, and that's it. Now you're done with the simplification process of the skeletal structure. Like this, we're going to learn to, and this is all the muscles to give you kind of a preview of what's to come. We're going to draw the skeletal structure in place like this, and we'll start with the front view. We'll draw different views. We want to just, we're going to draw it. Instead of learning the bone by itself, we're going to learn it like this, and we'll snap it into place. So we're going to draw it with it snapped into place already. But now you'll know how to draw the basic skeletal structure layout of this. So when we're learning all the bones, you'll know where they're properly supposed to be. If you didn't learn that proportion first, and like, okay, let's start drawing a skeleton, you'll be like, okay, I can see the head. I can see we're drawing this part of the arm now. We're drawing this bone, but you're not necessarily going to know how that bone looks, or the proportion might not be right. So you're drawing the bone, but it's all whacked out of proportion. Nothing quite looks right, and your skeleton looks weird in the end. Now, because you took the time to memorize this, the basic simplified skeleton, you'll be able to actually draw the human figure with proper proportions.
Right, so here's a piece of bonus information to show you how wide the widest part of the female figure is. Here's a quick draw over to what we just did already. And then just to show, I'm going to show you a couple models too to show that this works, and then I'm going to explain it. So the widest part of the hips, or the widest part of the female figure, obviously is always going to be the shoulders. But here in this case, you can see that most females, the out of their shoulders will match up with the outest part of their hips. And this is right at the crotch line, so right at that halfway line. Just keep in mind that you have these bones, the femur bones that come out and they stick out right here. This is where the femur bone is pushing against the outside. So right here, if you feel your legs right here, you actually feel that femur bone poking out. And that's the widest part. And another ratio to keep in mind is that if you take a line and come straight up from there, you'll see that matches with the shoulder pretty much. Another thing to keep in mind is that the hip bone, which is right here, if you draw a straight line for the hip bone coming right up, it matches pretty much with the outside of the breast. Because breast will typically come out a little bit wider. Remember, they roll around the ribs are like a curved thing, and the breast fit on that curve, and they come off. They set on it, and they come off it just a little bit like that. And so imagine water balloons on a cylinder, right? Because if you look at your body from up above, it's like a cylinder like this, has a curve like this. Right, so they're not just sitting on some flat surface; they're on a curved surface. So you gotta keep that in mind. And so those are some landmarks you can think about. That you have the hips will pretty much be equal with the outer side of the breast, and the shoulders will come down to the widest part, which is actually where the femur bone sticks out, which is right at the crotch line. So to show that this is true in action, well, first we'll look at the female body. You can see that this is true for the female figure. And this is a photo. You can see it matches right up. You have the widest parts coming out, matching up with their shoulders. The breast line coming down and matching up with I'll just draw that line again, matching up with the outside of the breast. And we'll look at another figure here. You can see it matches up. Right, so every person's a little bit different, but these are things that are pretty universal and they pretty match up. However, with the male figure, you'll see that the widest part is going to be his shoulders. And even if it's a skinnier guy, typically the shoulders are going to be the widest part. Why? Because this is going to be thin. The way the hip bones of a man right here and his humerus bone or femur bone that comes down, it doesn't come down very much wider than his hip bone. But a female, remember, her hip bone is shorter and a little bit wider, therefore the femur bone sticks out even further. And that's why you have this wide area like that, where the man, it comes down more like this. And the widest part of a man besides his shoulders are actually going to be, if he has buff legs, is going to be right about here, the halfway part of his legs or so. The legs actually usually come out and they stick out right here quite a bit. Alright, so then if you want to draw these differences, let's go ahead and do that really quickly here. Again, this is a bonus. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of all this right here, just so you can kind of see how this works. We'll zoom in just a little bit. Alright, so keep in mind that the breasts are going to sit right on this rib cage here that we have drawn. And so they're going to sit right here like that, and they're going to come out like an angle. At the end of this course, we have a bonus part for how to draw breast and breast mechanics. Just know they kind of have an angle to them. They're not round, right? They kind of come off an angle like that. And you have the little skin that comes up here. We'll go into all this later. Just keep in mind that from the collarbone to here, that length is about the same length as to the bottom of the breast. If you keep that in mind, those proportions in mind, then you'll most likely draw the breast the right size. Come down with this rib cage here and come all the way down to the point. This is something I like to do. Come down and make a point to the crotch line. This kind of V shape right here. And then right here, remember we're going to have the belly button right about here. Right here is going to come up. This shape right here is going to come up. This is going to be that's your love handle area. And it comes to the side right there like so. And then this kind of dips in usually and comes out like this. Depending on how much muscles they have and what their weight is. So if they're a heavier female, will have fat tissue right in here like this, and that's going to make that kind of come out. They're not going to have that like a, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, they don't have this indent right here. This just comes straight out like that because they have more fatty tissue there. Just keep in mind that it's still going to be the same. The widest part is still going to be right here, like that. And then we'll learn this later, but I'm just going to kind of put these shapes in right now. You have this serratus muscle that kind of comes down like this. And again, we'll learn this muscle later, but I'm just kind of showing you'll have these muscles come in like that. So that gives you the basic shape of the leg. That's why the leg has that kind of shape right there. Right, so that's basically how it works out. Now, these are just some tricks I wanted to show. Another trick to think about when you're thinking about the female figure is think about this shape right here. So you have this shape that comes down like this, with where the breasts are. And you can actually, I could have made the breasts a little bit higher. Probably went down a little bit far. Let's see. No, actually, it's right about where they would go. I did make them a little bit down further. So it depends on how heavy they are, how big they are. They're going to hang down further. But the idea is right here. Just keep this shape right here, and you can kind of like do like an oval shape like this. And this is kind of like that typical shape they do for, like, you know, superheroes and stuff like that. For a man, you can just draw that, and then you can draw the legs coming right off of that, because they're going to have the love handles and so forth. As you can see, the man figure, you have the love handles right there, and then the legs pretty much just come right off of that, right? And that works for the man. So you can just have the legs come right off of that, and you have your man figure. But for the female figure, instead, draw a straight line coming across this way. That's going to be the widest part, and then kind of draw this kind of shape like that. So if you keep that shape right there, that's going to help you draw that female figure, I think, more correctly. And then you come straight down for the legs like this. So if you keep that kind of shape in mind, it'll help you draw, I think, the female figure better. Again, with the breast, I want to make sure I don't come up too high. I want to stay right about here. And I don't want to go too low either. But typically, the problem that people have drawing breasts is they draw them too high. Just remember, you want that space between the breasts. So the cleavage should be right here. It shouldn't be way up there. It couldn't even be lower than that, actually. But that's typically, if you're going to push breasts together, the cleavage is going to form right about here. You just want to make sure always leave that space in there. All right, so there you go. Hopefully that little bit of bonus material will help you getting started with drawing the male and female figure as we continue on in the course. Thank you for watching.